What is illegal immigration? Illegal immigration refers to foreign-born, non-citizen, non-residents entering or remaining in a country without proper documentation. Illegal immigration does not always mean crossing the border illegally. In fact, many of the 12 million cases of illegal immigration in the United States developed because of a visa overstay. Still more cases develop when immigrants turn themselves in at border checkpoints to apply for asylum and were not granted that asylum after being legally released into the United States from immigrant detention centers. It is also important to remember that not all undocumented immigrants look a certain way or speak a certain language. Not all undocumented immigrants are Latino. Only around 76% of undocumented immigrants are from Mexico, Central America, the Caribbean, or South America, and not all people from these areas are Hispanic or Latino. Many are of European or African descent. Additionally, though the majority of undocumented immigrants currently living in the United States are Latino, the majority of undocumented immigrants currently entering the United States.
We interviewed Sheila Hurley, who is on the board of Sin Barreras, which is a Charlottesville nonprofit organization that aids immigrants. Sheila is an activist who works at the Church of the Incarnation as the coordinator of justice and charity. She explained to us a bit more about how illegal immigrants enter the country.
But they came in on a visa.
Yes, that was one of my questions, would you say most people who are undocumented, or what would you say the proportions are of people who actually entered the country illegally, the way sort of the media is under the impression people enter the country illegally?
Right. I don't know the answer to that, because there are people who have entered the country, without crossing a border checkpoint, who are currently in the process of applying for asylum. And so they are in the process of normalizing their status by applying for asylum. Whereas there are people who came in on a tourist visa, flew in, went through all the quote normal paperwork that you would have to do to enter the country, and then overstayed that tourist visa by years and years. So they are undocumented and are not working on normalizing their status. And so that's a weird dichotomy. And then I know people who came in entirely under the radar. Very few, I would say. Very few came in totally under the radar and are not working to change that. Are not currently on the government's radar. So it's, I would say, a pretty small percentage of the folks I know personally, at the very least, are came in without an A number, which is the alien registration number that the U.S. government gives to people who come in from another country.
Providing amnesty is when former crimes of undocumented immigrants are pardoned so that they may be able to normalize their immigration status. Typically, these crimes are limited to entering or remaining in the country. Since 1986, there have been many attempts in which the government has tried to provide amnesty to illegal immigrants. In 1986, President Ronald Reagan signed the Immigration Reform and Control Act. Almost 33 years ago, this act provided amnesty to about 3 million undocumented immigrants out of the 5 million that were in the country at that time. Not only did this act fail, but it made the number of illegal immigrants in the country triple. The immigration law tried to provide unauthorized immigrants who had already been living in the United States continuously since 1982, it allowed them to become eligible for temporary legal status after paying a $185 fee and demonstrating quote-unquote good moral character. After 18 months, they could then become eligible for green cards, provided they learned to speak English. Also, the law aimed to secure the U.S.-Mexico border against illegal crossings with new surveillance technology and a bigger staff at the border. The bill also, for the first time in history, imposed penalties on businesses that knowingly hired or employed unauthorized immigrants. The law gave green cards to 2.7 million immigrants. It was the largest legalization program in U.S. history. Many of the other illegal immigrants didn't qualify for legal status under the law because they arrived in the U.S. after 1982, and some people simply didn't know about it because outreach and publicity was often patchy in many communities. The border restriction proposed by the law was ineffective due to poor funding. Congress didn't provide enough money to ramp up Border Patrol hiring until the mid-1990s. The employer restrictions were also ineffective due to high demand in immigrant labor in the U.S. If the 1986 law failed, why will a new reform be any different? The hope is that legislators have learned from their past mistakes. A great deal of what's being talked about now reflects understanding of the flaws of the earlier bill. That may include more stringent border security as well as a legalization provision that covers all unauthorized immigrants, not just a portion. The Development, Relief, and Education for Alien Minors, or the DREAM Act, was introduced in 2001 with the hope to provide a pathway to legal status for undocumented youth who came into the country as children. The law came close to being passed in 2010, but it came 5 votes short in the Senate. The Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, known as DACA, is another way for amnesty because the crimes of entering the country is pardoned, if only temporary. If an individual entered the United States illegally when they were under 16 years old, have lived in the United States since at least June of 2007, and were born on or after June 16, 1981, they are able to apply for a 2-year period in which the government will not be actively seeking to deport them. During this time, they can work to obtain a status as a permanent U.S. resident, obtain a work permit, and get a driver's license. DAPA, or Deferred Action for Parents program, intended to offer a pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrant parents whose children are either residents or citizens of the U.S. While Obama proposed the program in 2014, it was blocked by a federal court in 2015 and never formally implemented. Whoever claims that there is no problem with border control is lying to themselves. Border control has become a larger concern to the U.S. government as time has passed, and it has become a hot topic over the past year as Donald Trump has worked towards beginning the construction of the wall. The U.S.-Mexico border stretches 1,954 miles long. About 700 of those miles already have some sort of barricade wall or fence. Most of it was built after President Bush signed the Secure Fence Act in 2006. Aside from the man-made barricades, there is a river that separates most of U.S. and Mexico. The problem at the border isn't, as President Trump stated, the bad hombres, nor rapists, no drug traffickers that are coming into the country. It's the resource problem. We can see European countries that have opened their borders to let all the refugees in, and now are struggling because they are running out of resources. This and any other country have a certain number of people it can sustain. If the country reaches maximum capacity, the infrastructure begins to fail. A big part of building the wall is the financial portion. Trump's initial estimate for the cost of the wall was $4 million. Then it raised to $6 million, and the estimate just kept increasing. Now, the estimate is around $20 million. Where is he going to get that money from? President Trump wants to call a national state of emergency to get the wall built, but that would take money from Natural Disaster Fund and from the military fund. Now the question is, how do we actually handle the situation with the border? Is the wall the answer? Is getting more police enforcement necessary? Or can we find a more peaceful way to settle this?